Good morning, everyone. It's great to see transport on the topic here at the SME Asia Pacific Conference. We've been at it for a long while, not always has transport been on the radar, so it's great to be talking about it. Also great to see lots of stories and business models, Australian companies really either innovating or pivoting to sort of change their businesses into more sustainable practices, and I think we've sort of followed a very similar path. It's also really interesting to see transport, obviously a transport-related panel here today, but some of the other presentations, it's not far. It's always on the slides. It's the transport component that's sort of pushed to the side or not really forgotten about, but we haven't really taken a really deep dive at it. But quick background, so since sort of 2015, we've been looking at, transport decarbonisation. My background and DNA is in global transport and global shipping. At this sort of intersection in 2015, we were seeing that the energy sector was starting to decarbonise. There was lots of transparency, lots of talk about it, but in the transport sector there was very little being done or said, and particularly in the global maritime space. So we sort of took the task to firstly try and we had a couple of different business models that we iterated to create transparency into global transport emissions using different modelling software and working closely with some partners in Europe. Fast forward, we also invested in R&D here back down in Melbourne with Swinburne University and some commercial partners, really focused on how do we get deep insights into the true state of emissions in these transport networks so that we can really decide what needs to be optimised and how to drive improvement, because back then there wasn't a lot of data, and still today I think we've got a fair way to go. Fast forward to sort of 2021, we made the decision that we had an existing freight forwarding business footprint. We decided to bring our now capabilities from tech and consulting into the freight forwarding business. To help shippers perhaps have an easier choice, that they didn't have to go through a big change path internally to understand transport-related carbon. All they needed to do was make a decision to move with us, and we would be taking a lot of that into the background and sort of handling it for them until they were ready to move, because what we've continuously seen in the transport sector is Scope 3 transport emissions, whether upstream or downstream, are something we'll deal with down the line. And that sends the wrong sort of demand signals, I think, to the transport industry, and therefore I think we are a little way behind. So Zilch we launched in 2021, Climate Active certified organisation and service. That's our sort of baseline offering. We're also looking at optimisation, carbon insetting, different products that'll sort of help our customers get transparency into the carbon footprint of the freight they're moving today, but also to drive reductions to meet targets out to 2030 and sort of beyond. For those who aren't familiar with freight forwarding, just to backtrack a couple of steps, we handle anything related to importing or exporting of products. That includes the freight, the customs compliance, trade compliance, and in our case, looking at the overall emissions of each of those transport legs and how we can optimise that. Just click to slide one here. So it's obviously, it's become clear that electrification in the road freight sector is going to be, one of our, the focus. This slide here, which might be a little bit difficult to see, but if we look at the diesel powered truck, there's a couple of truck, sort of a life cycle assessment of trucks. We look at the diesel powered truck down the bottom, and obviously a lot of the emissions sit within the tank to wheel component, but in the electrification it's in that well to tank, so the electricity component. In this particular case, and looking at this particular study, the average emission intensity of an electric truck can save between 35 and 85% of emissions, depending on the electricity mix within those markets. So I think that really highlights, obviously a significant opportunity, but it all sort of hinges on this push to renewables and how we are powering these fleets. As I sort of touched with at the start, we've sort of always been looking at through the lens of how do we get better data and insights, and in particular in this fuel transition when we have electric trucks, diesel trucks, trains, all sorts of transport modes moving through the network, the access to information about the carbon intensity of these transport movements becomes really important. We still find today inaccurate reporting of transport emissions is a significant problem. recent case studies, and we're a bit of a dog with a bone about this particular topic because we feel that, if we aren't setting the right baselines with 2017, 2020, our targets really, out to 2030 can be really compromised. We've seen case studies with customers where, and a particular customer always jumps to mind, a climate active certified company that's obviously investing in carbon credits and has put a theoretical internal price on carbon on their business, was overstating the logistics component by 70%. So there's obviously a direct cost to the business, and it's a really hard position to set reduction targets against those inaccurate numbers. So we've spent a lot of our time developing and aligning with global standards, the ISO 14083, which was released last year on the back of the Global Logistics Emissions Council. So we're very focused on the measurement and reporting piece, because again, we know that that becomes critical in driving improvement. Where are we? So when we look at the electrification and the different components of road transport mobility, it really is a focus for us to understand, if we do adopt these technologies, what's the impact across the supply chain. Obviously, if we're engaging with EV operators in that upstream, downstream transportation, so if I put my sort of shipper's hat on, they're really looking to understand those Scope 2 emissions from the EVs and what the impact of those are, which, as we well know, is complex. Transport's complex, and then we bring in these other layers of complexity around the charging of trucks and whatnot. The access to data around electricity mixes globally is really hard to get your hands on. In Europe, it might be a little bit more advanced, but I think it's difficult in Australia. We have charging points coming online. What are the sort of electricity mixes there? And again, this gets a bit beyond our pay grade, but for us, being able to sort of extract this information out of transport networks and make it visible to our customers as a freight intermediary becomes really important and a key value proposition to our customers. So I guess how are we looking to solve the problem? So again, coming back to our approach has always been around developing deeper insights into the emissions profile of moving freight whilst moving the freight, because we also see that if we've got our hands on the task, we can certainly provide the measurement reporting piece, but also provide solutions to optimise, pick greener paths, cleaner paths, perhaps a better way to put it, identify cleaner transport modes and assist our customers to optimise that process. We've always had a sort of a view of tech. We've spun off a tech company that's later in labs that's developing solutions that move beyond modelling. So particularly in the transport space, there's a lot of modelling data used that we estimate the transport emissions look like X. We're in sort of the early stages of starting to get more primary data through the transport networks, so working with the trucking providers, and obviously in this space we'll be understanding these different charging points in electricity mix. But we're no way there yet, but there's, this is where we see the game has to get to. We have to have these really good quality data insights. It's going to require collaboration and a sort of an advancement in the tech space, but we're certainly investing there. Yep, just to wrap out, I think that, again, transport's obviously a really key component to a lot of the things that we do, but often is just left to the side because it's one of those, it's either a small percentage of the overall carbon footprint. I think that the result there has been that, those demand messages and commercial signals to the transport sector perhaps haven't been there. So I think that, any of those business owners out there that have that transport task, do ask your transport providers about what the solutions are, and if they're using forwarders, see what they can bring to the table. So thank you. I'll leave it there.
Oh, thanks.